You know, right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese on the podcast that brings you the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, entertainment, and media. And Joe, our guest today, is the perfect guest for us because big name in sports, big name in media. He's having a successful career off the field as well. This guy is just tremendous. Played 13 seasons for the New York Giants, Super Bowl champion. He's a broadcaster, and he's also currently a senior director for Cushman and Wakefield.
Yes, he's one of the most well-known New York athletes of all time. And now I think he's one of the most well-known New York sports media personalities of all time. So this is a real big treat for us. And we're really happy to have him on, Howard Cross. Howard, thank you for doing this with us. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks, guys.
So Howard, we're approaching some training camps here, and then fall gets crazier for you. How do you, I don't know, call it downtime because you are busy, you are working, but how do you spend the off season now?
Well, like you said, I do work. I do the real estate thing a lot, so we do that most of the time. I get a lot of chances to play golf though with clients and friends and stuff. So if I have downtime and some time for myself, I'll grab some clubs and go out and play.
There you go. So, I mean, you've been in New York now for a few decades. You used to those New York winters yet? That could be absolutely brutal.
No, I'm not used to it yet. Hoping to move back down south one day, but we'll see.
There you go. So, of course, you're from Alabama. Growing up, did you play any other sports? And at what age did you realize that you had a shot to make a career out of playing football?
Never really thought about the whole career thing. I played everything growing up. I played baseball for a long time, and I played basketball. At my sophomore through senior year, I ran track. So I did a lot of sports and stuff. Enjoyed it. Didn't really think about being like a college recruit until colleges start calling you. Back then, they called you on your house phone. So I was being recruited for football, basketball, and for track. So I was having a little fun.
Yeah, so what is the recruitment process like today? Is it different than it was back then?
Well, my son is in Notre Dame, so he was recruited, I guess, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's a big difference because now with social media, they can text you, they can they can hit you on Twitter, they can hit you on Instagram, so they have a lot more access to you. Where before it would be they would call your house, and your mom or your dad would pick up the phone and say, "Oh, so and so's on the phone for you," and you'd go talk to them while your parents are there. Now they can talk to your kids wherever, whenever.
Makes sense. And ultimately, how did you end up committing to Alabama?
Um, went through the process of went to a bunch of schools and visited and everything, and what it came down to is like I was looking at their depth charts of all these different teams. I could play any position, so I was like, okay, what do I do? Where am I going to go? And every team had like 15 guys at every position except for Alabama. They had one tight end, so I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try this school.
Yeah, it worked out for you, that's for sure. And you were at Alabama, at a time where kind of ahead of the curve now, way before the Saban days where you
Yeah.
the most dominant programs. So and you stayed in state, so I'm sure that was big for you. Were you also recruited by a lot of schools out of state?
Oh yeah, I got recruited by almost every school in the country. So like I said, I had a really lot of fun in high school playing ball.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that. So later, you're excelling there in your career, of course. Known as in the pros as more of a blocking tight end, but had a very successful career receiving the ball as well. And you impressed a lot in college. What do you remember about, because obviously at this point in 1989, the draft is totally different now, but what do you remember about being drafted by the Giants in 1989? And how did you ultimately find out that you were selected?
Well, I had gone, there was a bunch of guys back then who went to Vegas to hang out for the draft. So I was with a bunch of guys, probably like 25 or 30 of us. And they were like all first round picks getting picked right away, like Derek Thomas, Broderick Thomas. There was a bunch of guys there. So we had fun, watching them and everything. And the next morning, I got a call from Coach Parcells saying, "Hey, I drafted you today. Are you ready to be a New York Giant?" And I was like, "Oh, cool. Sounds like fun. Uh, I'll see you here in 3 days." I'm like, "What?" So, that whole process of being 20, 21 years old, trying to figure out how to get to the airport on your own and fly to New York to play in a game and not realizing that the stadium wasn't in New York but in New Jersey. It was a little bit of a stretch when you're coming from Alabama.
No, yeah. What was your first, few weeks like being in New York and New Jersey, and how did you adjust to that? And also, what was it like meeting Parcells for the first time? Obviously, just a few short while ago, they just won the Super Bowl, so you know that you're going with one of the best coaches in the league at the time.
Like I said, I didn't follow it as close as I probably, if I look back at it now, like my son follows it more than I do, but I just didn't follow it like that. I just thought about someone was saying like, you're going to get drafted. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. They said, okay. So I wasn't really focused on the whole draft part of it. I was just hanging out with my buddies, having a good time, get drafted, meet Coach Parcells, and automatically understand like who he is because of Lawrence Taylor's walking around, Carl Banks is walking around, Harry Carson in and out of the locker room all the time talking to the guys. And I'm like, okay, so I know who all these guys are, and this coach this is going to be pretty cool. My first few weeks was funny because, I think, like week 3, someone stole my truck, and I was like laughing. I'm like, okay. I said, so now I'm a real New Yorker. Someone stole my car. So and I went on from there. It was like, let's go practice, figure it out, and it was pretty cool. It worked out. It was a lot of fun. We enjoyed our time. A lot of great friends, a lot of great memories and opportunities from that time.
Yeah, I'd say it worked out. So if you win a championship in New York, it's very, very different than anywhere else. So not long after you were drafted, the Giants won their second Super Bowl championship under Bill Parcells. So explain what it was like being around those people, the dedication during the regular season, and ultimately, when did you guys realize that there was something special in that locker room?
Well, the year before, we lost in the playoffs to the Rams. Flipper Anderson, catches the ball, runs out. But that year, we probably were even a stronger team. I thought we had a chance to win the Super Bowl. That was my rookie year. Then the following year, we come back and we rattle off 10 games before anybody, knocks us off our path. I think it was the Eagles that we lost to in the 11th game, and I think San Francisco lost, or maybe the Rams or something. So instead of being 11-0, both we were both 10-1, I believe, and that was kind of fun just to be there with them playing in that game, and it was so close. So it's different because growing up I never won a championship. I think I won in high school basketball or junior high basketball or something, but outside of that we never ever won a championship. We're always so close. So it's really cool to be in a situation with a team that was so good that they were going to get a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
So you win the Super Bowl, and then you get to have a crazy parade, which I'm sure is nothing like you could ever have imagined. What was that process like for you, or just what do you remember from that day?
See, now that's the difference. Like that was the start of the Persian Gulf War, so they were threatening to blow everything up. So I think that the parade was around the parking lot.
Interesting. Yeah, so much different than the later parades, for sure.
Yep.
What was it like there at that Super Bowl? It's obviously very tense because of that. You had the snipers on the roof. Was it easy for you guys to just focus in on the game, or were you kind of aware with everything that was going around there?
Oh, you couldn't not be aware of it. That was before the world was as crazy as it is now. So you never really saw soldiers walking around with guns and stuff. And to have soldiers in our lobby carrying M16s, they were like fully brigade walking around, making sure everything was okay. It was just different. You'd go out to dinner, you come back and, hey guys, I appreciate you being here, kind of thing. And it's like, wow, like nobody was allowed to be in our facility or in the hotel. So it was definitely different.
Yeah, certainly crazy times, and now the world is kind of used to that type of stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it's an everyday thing.
Yeah. So for you, you are actually you played the third most games all time for the Giants, 207 behind Strahan and Eli. How much pride did you take in being ready every single week, basically going out there, putting the uniform on, being able to play for the 13 seasons you did?
It was just different. I think that's another thing that's different about the game today is that they do all these do all these things now to protect players to make sure they're safe. And we practiced full time.
Yeah.
We practiced with pads on a lot. We understood how to practice hard and not hurt each other. It was just different. So being a part of that and seeing that, it was just you know being around, having one-on-ones with Lawrence and Carl every day, going to the Super Bowl, and like we're still in the same vein, the same path, doing the same thing. And understanding early on that we had so many scouting reports and so many details about every player that you played against. It was just interesting to see the big difference. It was like that in college, but not to the level it was in the pros.
So you mentioned LT, Lawrence Taylor. Uh, you are maybe the only person or one of the very few that got to be teammates with both Strahan and Lawrence Taylor and go up against both of them in practice. Uh,
Hmm.
so just being with them on the field in practice and seeing how great both of them were, how did what they were able to do really help elevate the rest of the team and showing like this is what has to be done on the field?
Well, when you play with guys like LT and Banks, you see on a daily basis how hard they work. You get a lot of jokes and stuff about what LT was like, but he was like a football savant. He really understood the game. He understood what was happening. And Carl was like a very underrated player who was like, I think, basically a Hall of Famer that
Mhm.
played hard every day. So you get to watch them every day. I played with two guys in college that were equally as great, with Derek Thomas and Phineas Bennett. So being around those guys every day helped me be a better player because you're playing against two of the best seemingly day in and day out in practice.
Yeah, how was Strahan in comparison?
Strahan was a really good player. He came along when LT and those guys were about to step away, so he got to see a little bit of them. And then, as his career grew, he became the focus of the pass rush. He had more and more confidence, and playing against guys every week and every year that were good. You got to know them. It wasn't like it is today where guys got traded out, or went to another team. We were basically together for almost the entire time. So Stray got to play against me in practice every day because we were running a 4-3 when he was playing. So I got to block him every day. Then he go out and play against guys from the Eagles and the Cowboys, and you got to know and understand. You really got to know the guys because you played against them so many times.
Yeah,
Right.
and that I mean, you just played your time there with the Giants, like a bunch of legendary people. Obviously, you may have not interacted with them as much, but they were the coaches there for you when they won the Super Bowl. Did you guys in the locker room have a feeling like, okay, Belichick and Coughlin, they might go on to be really good head coaches?
Well, they were two of the most intense guys, all the time because most of the guys were like, it was like Bill Parcells, big personality. So all the coaches were kind of like, okay, what Bill says, what Bill says, what Bill says, and then you'd have like Belichick, who was the guy who was designing defenses and talking to guys all the time and challenging them. And he was like, even though he's this little guy, he was very funny, he was very intense, and he wanted to get it done. Whereas Coach Coughlin, totally different animal, where he's like locked in 10,000% of the time. And of course, he's coaching the receivers, the goofiest group of guys on the team. So he was constantly running them down, trying to get them into meetings on time and always hassling them. And they were always giving him a hard time. But he truly was loved by the guys, and they still keep up with him to this day.
How tough of a decision was it for you to retire? Now, granted, you played 13 seasons and you accomplished a lot, and you have one of the more decorated careers in the history of the organization. Was it difficult to step away, or at that point did you know your body was ready for the next chapter after
Well,
football?
I had what they call microfracture surgery, is something that they give where they drill a hole in your knee and try to get it to bleed, and you form a callus or something so that you're, to prevent the quote unquote bone on bone kind of situation. And I was like, okay, so we've played in the Super Bowl against the Ravens. Um, they've blown up a bunch of shit. Everything's going crazy out there. Like 9/11's happened, and I'm like, is this really what I want to be doing? I just had kids. My babies were born. My twins were born at that time. So I started trying to figure out, like, is this something I want to do? Do I want to continue to do it? They're like, well, if you play 5 more years, you're going to make more money than you ever made when you played, in the past, because the way the rules have changed, and I was more thinking about, I want to be around my kids. I want to make sure that they get to know me because this world's crazy. And I kind of decided like that was it, and I'm good. I didn't want to have another surgery, so I was out.
Yeah, but right after that, you basically jumped right into the broadcasting career. So, how did the opportunity come about? I mean, good timing there. Yes, basically just launches there, just the Yankee channel. They want to get some other programming on there. You got contacted for that. So, how did that come to be? And then ultimately, a few years later, how did you end up getting the role as the sideline reporter for the Giants radio broadcast? And how challenging was that to kind of learn how to do that role? Because it's really not easy being down on the sideline trying to get that information and for doing a lot of prep work for a lot of stuff that might not even get used in the game.
Well, it's a little different from what I do because I'm kind of like a sideline analyst. I'm talking about the game and the plays and giving Bob and Carl a heads up of what I'm seeing on the sideline or how players reacting uh, to a last play and what's going on. I got into broadcasting because I do a lot of auctions and a lot of public speaking and everything. And some agent saw me. He goes, like, "Have you ever thought about doing broadcasting?" I'm like, maybe. So he's like, "Well, let's look at it." I think had a chance to be on the Best Damn Sports Show. I think I turned it down or changed agents. I can't remember what happened with that. Uh, Yes called me, so I was getting a job with Yes right away. Um, I had just done what's now Get Up on the morning show. The one with Stephen A. Smith's song. It used to be called Cold Pizza,
Yep.
and I was doing that when it
Woody
first
Page
started.
and Skip, yeah.
Yeah, so I got involved with it kind of that way, and it just kind of blossomed. We did the Yes was in the beginning. It was like a live show that we did right after the second game ended. We do a hit between Jets and Giants 1 and 4 o'clock game, and then we would do the show right after the second game ended, so we could talk about them.
Yeah, and there's like been a
So
lot
the
of great
Giants kept.
lot of
Yeah, the
great
Giants.
broadcast a lot of great
Yeah,
broadcasts there too. Yeah.
yeah. So the Giants kept saying, "We'd love for you to come and be a part of our program." And I'm like, okay." So I was like, if something goes on with Yes, they're like, "You wouldn't leave Yes to come here," and then all of a sudden, Yes dropped their football program, and I'm like, "Oh." So I
Perfect.
think I'm available. So I can do it then and haven't looked back.
So I gotta ask you, you're on the sideline there. How cold were you in 2007 at Lambeau Field for that NFC Championship game?
It was 27 below. We kept running out of batteries because the batteries were dying because it was so cold. It was using all the juice of the batteries up. I had everything on that I could buy and then some. So it was pretty interesting to say the least at 27 below.
Yeah, I mean, everybody looked freezing. Of course, Coach Coughlin, his face there. Just another
Yeah.
question about being on the sideline. How impressed are you with Paul Dottino's speed post game running to go hunt down an interview? I mean, he beats everybody out there.
He's the ultimate Giants fan, and he is definitely talking to the producers constantly, trying to say, well, who you want to talk to, who you want to talk to, and then he's like trying to get them to get stats because he's keeping stats as he's going through the game, and he's trying to figure out which guys they want for the interview on the outside if we can get them right off the field. And the guys are really cool because they take the time to talk to him.
So as Nick alluded to at the top, you're a senior director for Cushman and Wakefield. So where did the interest for that start? And was there any particular person who kind of guided you in that direction?
No, not really. Like when I first started, I was with CBRE. I started there probably 2003 or 2005. I can't remember. It was more of I got recruited. Someone has said like, "Hey, you should talk to Howard Cross. He'd be a great person for your business." And eventually, I sat in a room. A bunch of guys are talking to me. I'm listening to them. And the theory is that I know a lot of from all the charity events and stuff. I know a lot of CEOs and CFOs and whatever, and we basically help counsel them on their real estate needs for their corporations. So I'm like, okay, I can try that. Worked in Jersey for like 2.5, 3 years. I didn't feel like I was getting the right coverage, so to speak. Left and went into the city. Got into the city, met a guy that was the CEO of a firm, wanted me to come work for him. I worked for him for about 9 years, 10 years. And then finally I got over to Cushman and Wakefield, where I actually work for the global chairman now.
It's very impressive. And another thing that's impressive is you do great community service, mostly working with the youth to keep them in school. So if you
Mhm.
want to talk about that briefly.
Yeah, growing up in the South, where we always helped each other do everything. You'd be cutting somebody's yard one day, helping somebody plant their garden the next day. We were always helping each other constantly. So, and growing up in like a church kind of family neighborhood community, where we're always in church doing something or donating or cleaning up or fixing something for somebody, it just comes naturally that you try to help wherever you can help. With kids in education, I look at kids on the aspect of, you know, they have an endless opportunity to do anything in the world they want, but they don't always understand, how to access some of this stuff. So you talk to them about what do you want to be when you grow up. Like I talk to especially athletes, and they're like, well, I'm going to play for the league. I'm going to do this. I'm like, if you get an education from this school, you could probably buy a team. They're like, what? And
Mhm.
kids don't think of the world like that. So especially now, kids, they make so much money. There are so many great opportunities for them. They just need to, go to school, try to figure out what they want to do. And school isn't, I always tell kids, college is this thing where you have to learn exactly what you're going to do, unless you're going to be a doctor or something. It's something where they want you to, apply yourself, show that you can learn and comprehend things, and then all of a sudden you might get an opportunity to work for somebody. My daughter's is a perfect example. She's a communications major, and she's working for Millennium, a hedge fund, and that's what she's doing an internship for. So I'm like, okay, that works. She's like, I think so. I'm like, yeah. So you never know the opportunity you're going to get when you're getting the education. I just know it's better for kids to think about it and stuff. And a lot of kids, unfortunately, especially inner city kids, they just don't think that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And education is important. Your daughter Bella, the honors
Hmm.
college at University of Alabama, which is just tremendous. And your son, Howard Cross the third, goes to a tremendous school in Notre Dame. And with him, yeah, I'm just curious. Were you more nervous when you were playing or more nervous watching him play at times?
I think it was more not so much nervous as you're just like when you have kids and stuff, you want them to do their very best all the time. So watching them play a sport or something, it was always fun and exciting to watch them play. But you're like the whole time you're watching, you're like, I hope you're having fun.
Yeah.
I hope give it your best, but I hope you're having fun. And that's what you really want to, impress upon your kids. I think, especially high school and junior high and everything else is like, are they having fun? Because this is supposed to be a distraction for them and not this full-time job like a lot of coaches would like for it to be. So, but he had a great time. He played hard. He really understood the game from the aspect of where they were playing him at D line, and he just enjoyed doing it. So I'm like, maybe you want to play baseball? Nope. You want to play this? Nope. I want to play football. Okay, go play football. Knock yourself out.
So how did he end up being a defensive lineman? I would think he wanted to follow in your footsteps as tight end. Did he play tight end at all in high school? And they or both sides of the ball?
No, he just he played at St. Joe's in Montvale, so they have a very robust program, and there are very few players that get a chance to play both ways, unless you're mostly they're like running backs and
Right.
linebackers in some cases, but everybody else, there. I don't think there are any receivers that play DB. It's like you kind of get you a spot in, and you fit in, and it's almost like a small college program.
Yeah, absolutely. Great school there for sure. So for you in your career, whether it's your playing career, your broadcasting career, or your current career, what for you would you say is your I'm right moment? What I mean by that is a time where you wanted to do something, you ask somebody for advice, they say, I don't know, Howard, I don't think that's going to work out for you. And you say, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately you will see why it is that I'm right.
Well, in big corporations, you have a lot of people that you could know someone, but everyone that knows you was, oh, I know that guy. So it's a lot of that goes on. What I found that from a corporate standpoint, if you're not doing anything terribly questionable, I would say, but it's better to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And I think that if you have a good idea of something solid that you know you can do and get done, you have to be, confident with it. So to the point where, okay, I'm gonna get it done. And then they'll say, oh, why don't you tell somebody? So I tried to tell you, but you told me no. And then you can get through it. It's like I played golf with a young kid the other day that he was a caddy. He's going through, and I know he doesn't know, what he's doing. I know he doesn't know
Mhm.
anything about it. He's just out there to get his money and to carry the clubs. I'm like, and he's giving reads for putts. And I said, this is a very important lesson for you. He goes, what's that? No matter what it is you're about to say it with total confidence so that we will believe that you know what you're talking about. I'm like, he goes, but what if I'm wrong? Doesn't matter if you're wrong, just say it with confidence. And the kid's like, okay. So the rest of the day, he goes, this is where it's going to go. And he talk about it. And I'm like, oh, and then we weren't really listening to him, but he sounded so much better and he had so much more confidence. He's like, hey, he goes, look, I should caddy for you guys all the time. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Listen, if you say it with conviction, you'll be right. And Howard, this was
Yeah.
the perfect podcast for that. One of the best answers to this question, I think, since Nick started asking it. Thank you. Howard, we thank you again with your time. Really, really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I'm a Jets fan, but Nick's the Giants fan between the two of us. So we wish best of luck to the Giants, and we wish the best of luck to you in your career, everything this upcoming season. We'll stay in touch. And what we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share or promote, Nick and I know you're heavily involved in all types of charity work. So thanks again for doing this with us. And if you have anything else to say, feel free.
I mean, if you guys get a chance, always try to help when you can. I always say, like, anybody that helps, it helps them too. One of the things we've been working on the last couple of years is like Autism New Jersey. It's like something that people don't really think about, but these kids are growing up and becoming adults with autism. So, I just tell people, like, that's one of the charities that if you want to get involved with it, because these parents, they get older and their kids keep growing up. The kids aren't sick. They're just out of place, out of time sometimes.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Howard, we thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Howard Cross, my co-host Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.